If you've been in business and you've been successful, delegate. What got you there? What you touched on? What's your exit strategy? Well, bring in professionals that work on exit strategies. They knew I was telling the truth.
Yeah.
They could trust me in, not to try to sell them something that wasn't going to fit or wasn't exactly what they're looking for. Those in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, reach out to me. Try to connect with me. We have a network of folks that are ahead of us in the journey, are just behind us in the journey. But, there's no need to try to do this alone.
Welcome to the Biz Life Podcast. I am Donnie Bedore, your host, and we are here to talk about the business life, not the busy life. Today, I have an amazing guest for you, Pryce Marshall. Welcome, sir.
Thanks, Donnie.
Yeah.
Really excited to be here.
Well, I'm glad you're here. You're like one of our biggest fans.
Well, we talked about this.
Yes.
Shared it twice.
There you go.
Yeah. Biggest fan.
Love it. Perfect. Well, maybe that's why one of our videos went viral.
I think his content probably is why. That was fascinating.
Yeah. It's crazy. Anyway, so we digress a little bit.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm glad you're here. Let's I always like to dive in to the guest first. And so I'm going to pass it over to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where'd you come from? Yeah. How long were you in prison? Stuff like that.
So I am Pryce Marshall. I'm raised in Weatherford, Texas. So really far from home. And went to college, Texas A&M, studied rangeland ecology and management. After that, I went to work on a cattle ranch in Nebraska. If we're talking about stints, that was about 18 months.
Okay.
Hottest summer and coldest winter that they'd had in years.
Wow.
So the old timers were talking about how rough that winter was. And there I was, the guy from Texas. After that, moved back to Fort Worth. I sold women's shoes, and I absolutely love doing that, but it's time to make a change. But we dive into it later, but I learned a lot about customer service from selling women's shoes.
Yeah, I bet.
And so I got a real estate license 2014.
Okay.
I've been with the same real estate group, same I guess, admin team.
Okay.
For most of that time. They like to say I broke up with them for 9 months or so and came back. So we're now a Berkshire Hathaway franchise under the name of Premier Properties.
Okay.
Based out of Houston. Our office is in Fort Worth.
Nice. Wife, kids?
Yeah. So I'm married to my wife, Corinne. It will be 8 years in September.
Oh, congrats.
Thank you. Time flies.
Where'd you meet her at?
Work. Actually,
okay.
yeah.
All right, so she was a realtor as well, or
no, she was our
assistant or something.
Yeah, she was our broker at the time's assistant, and
you started flirting with her at work.
There's way more to that story, but the moment she figured out I was getting divorced, it was maybe 5 minutes later. She's like, "Hey, so what's going on? What are you doing?"
She had it on you.
She really. Yeah, she made the first moves, and I was single for like all of 3 weeks.
There you go.
So it was good. So she had a son named Ashton, who's going to be 18 next week.
Okay.
I adopted him when he was 11.
Oh, it's so cool.
Which it's quite a journey to give someone your last name that already lives in your house.
Right.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But we did that, and then we had our daughter Brighton 4.5 years ago, and our son Sullivan. Sully is 3.5 years old now.
Yeah. Well, I admire you on that, right? Because whenever you have a kid, obviously you're going to love that kid, right? And you have to. You created that kid, right? But then whenever you have someone else that you didn't create, but you love them so much that you adopt them, to me, there's no greater love, and I admire you for that.
Yeah, thank you. It's interesting. Ash wrote a term paper one time about how we didn't get along the first couple of years because I'd never been around a kid.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So we met when he was 8.
It's a little different, right? Because you're like,
Well, yeah. So he wrote this paper and wanted me to read it. And his English teacher, junior English teacher, said, "Did you read the paper?" And I did. It was very insightful that he picked up on. I didn't know how to, parent a 8-year-old. He didn't know how to be the kid of an 8-year-old. And so with the littles, as I call them, we're growing through this process together. Right. So it's the love's the same. It's just different. Like I have a better understanding of how to respond to them now because we've grown to that point in our lives together.
Right.
And when they get to 8 years old, I guess I have it all figured out. I don't know.
I don't know.
So if you're doing the math, it's 13 years between number 1 and number 2, and then 14 months between 2 and 3.
Nice. Okay. Very, very cool. So as far as would like to dive into your shoe salesman experience, right? The reason I do is and we talked about this earlier, but I used to work in the RV industry, and one thing that we always look for in, salesmen is just those people that are willing to take the extra mile. I guess just any salesman type of position, you want that, right? But my boss always said, you want to look for a shoe salesman. I've never met it. You're the first real shoe salesman that I would call my friend that I actually know. So I was like, why? I never really got that. But of course I was younger, 21, 22 years old. But he did. He said, man, the best salesman I've ever seen is an ex-shoe salesman. And I was like, okay, I trust you. But yeah.
It's funny. I first started selling shoes in college. I applied at a job at Dillard's.
Okay.
And I wanted to be in men's clothes.
Okay.
And through the training program, they would cycle you through the different departments and see where you're fit and what might work. And I ended up being selected for women's shoes, which was one of the only commission roles in the store.
Okay.
So I was, 24, still in college, and making pretty good money plus commission.
Okay.
And I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I started selling a lot of handbags because I could match.
Right.
I led the store in sales one day in handbags alone, while in training, actually. So I just figured out how to match those with shoes.
Right.
And I was really into clothes at the time, so fashion was somewhat natural for me.
It's funny you say that too. Now, sorry to interrupt, but so my mom, she worked for women's clothing stores all my life growing up, Learners, and I don't even know what company she worked for. But anytime that we wanted to go hang out with her or see her, we would go up to the store, right? And so I'm always, straightening up the clothing racks and just being around women's clothing, right, all the time. And it's funny, anytime, my wife is wanting an outfit or something like that, she comes to me because I have, I know, and we'll be walking through a store. I'm like, you should get that and that. It's going to look great on you. And she's finally learned, after 31 years, she's finally learned to trust me a little bit.
Complete opposite with my wife. So after we've been together for 10 years, in September, in August, she's going to nail me on this when she hears this. I think it's the end of August.
Okay.
We've always gone back and forth on when the first date was, but
yeah,
I've finally figured out what her taste actually is in clothing.
Okay.
For a long time, I would suggest things, and hey, I've got this figured out. I had a decent living doing this, and no, I was completely off. So now I can point out, I think you'd probably wear that. She goes, yeah, I'd get it in every color they had.
There you go.
So small wins.
Yeah. Hey, take them when you can get them.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely, hey, guys, if you're listening or watching this, man, take the little bit of extra to learn what your wife likes. It goes a long way.
It's a really, really long ways.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so wake up one day and like, you know what? I'm going to sell shoes. No. So there was a journey there that you took and end up landing in the shoe department.
Yeah. So I went through the shoe department, left college and went and worked on a cattle ranch, and came.
Totally.
Tell me about it. Just wait. There's more on that one. But at the time I needed to have a drastic life change. So went and worked on the cattle ranch and learned what a long day actually looked like. And learned a lot about where I'm at today from that. But moved back to Fort Worth, needed a job, and I met a gentleman that was friends of family friends, and he happened to say, well, that guy would be great at selling shoes. And they said, well, actually, he sold shoes in college and is looking for a job. So I went to go work for Stanley Eisman.
Okay.
At the time, sure he's still up there now. One of the largest independent retailers in the country here in Fort Worth.
Okay.
They've had their brand for, I'm going to guess, 70 years now. I believe we celebrated 61 years when I was there. So, Stanley is the go-to in women's shoes. We had clientele from all over the country that if they even had a layover at DFW, they'd come see us.
I'll be darned.
So that's where I credit a lot of my customer service.
Yeah.
We had all walks come through there. Celebrities, folks that had their security detail stand at the door.
Oh, wow.
A judge that had their bailiff in the...
Did you ever help out any famous people that you remember?
Yeah, I did. And for the most part, I had no idea who they were. So
Right.
I don't watch a lot of movies, and so would say that's whoever it might be. And I don't know who that is.
Yeah.
Funny story, had a shoe designer in who grew up in Paris, and he has a brand, Paul Mayer is his name, and he has a brand in New York, and it's just this little ballet slipper.
Okay.
And for whatever reason, we got to talking about how he was raised to just respect everybody. Yeah. Everybody's equal. And, I think someone said, told him in French, everybody poops the same way. And he's telling me this.
Yeah.
That afternoon, we're on Camp Bowie, so we would have folks come in and ask for bottles of water frequently. This guy comes in, sits down, and he smells like the bar. And younger kid. And we're trying to get him out of there. And Paul comes over to me and goes, you know who that is, right? No idea. And he was on the underwater gold mining show. Oh. One of the main characters. And once I heard that, everything fell into place on what this guy had said. He caught a red eye from Anchorage. He was coming for a wedding. He needed a pair of boots because he left his nicer boots at home. And we didn't sell any men's shoes. Yeah. So I sent him to the boot store down the street. But, Paul's lesson that day came to reality that afternoon. And ever since then, it's just been something that I carry with me.
Yeah. No, I like it. Yeah. Everybody has, generally everybody has two legs and their butt faces the ground.
Yep.
Right? Yep. True story. What would you say the biggest lesson takeaway in going through that experience selling shoes? Right. What do you think? What do you think it was that taught you the customer service aspect of business?
Oh, repeat customers a lot. If I provided a good service, and I didn't have, someone competing that they knew everybody's name when they walked in the door and that became their call customer. If I had someone come in and ask for me routinely, I've got a couple of customers that I still keep up with to today that are from there. I knew that they knew I was telling the truth. Yeah. They could trust me in, not to try to sell them something that wasn't going to fit or wasn't exactly what they're looking for. Yeah. And when I would come back, or when they would come back rather, I knew I did a good job and I provided that level of service. Yeah. One day we had, this was a big eye opener for me, but we had a trunk show where the designer would come in or the manufacturer would come in, and we had this old lady that had been selling shoes for 100 years. And I sold that day more than I had ever sold $10,000 worth of shoes off of the customers she couldn't cover. Oh, wow. And learning how to really manage that volume of business in one day was a big deal. So,
yeah. Dang. Yeah, that's a big feat there.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. There it is.
There it is. A little late. He's a rookie.
It's okay.
Yeah. So what, on the show, right? We have, or not the show, but the listeners of the show, we try to dedicate this podcast really to entrepreneurs, right? You have beginning entrepreneurs, those that are inspired, about to open a business, just open a business. And then you have some that have been around for, 10, 15, 20 years in business, right? So let's talk to those two people real quick. What advice would you give the beginning entrepreneur, someone that's like, they're really just stressed about trying to make money, right? They've invested, maybe they've saved all their life, maybe they're leaving corporate America and getting into business, for themselves for the very first time, right? And they're just completely stressed out. And then, of course, maybe the longtime entrepreneur that's starting to really think about the exit, right? Let's talk to those two people real quick. And if you're one of those, this will be again for you. So, yeah, let's talk to the beginning entrepreneur real quick. What advice would you give them?
So, starting out, I'd really, and this will go to both audiences. You can't cut corners. You'll get lost doing that. But if you're coming out of a pretty rigid environment like corporate America, where you know what your responsibilities are, you don't have to be very creative to go out and get the results. You may think it's easier to cut a corner or to fib a little bit or whatever it might be. And it's going to show up at the end of the day or the end of the month or the end of the year. It will catch up with you and it's going to backfire. I think the biggest thing when I went out in real estate, someone told me was never guess at the answer. If you don't know it, just tell your customer, hey, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but I'm going to find out what it is.
I like that.
And once I was taught that, and I would go find the answer, tell them what it was, I started closing deals. Yeah. So I earned their trust that way.
I like it. Yep. Research and return.
Yeah.
Right. Research and return. You don't have to have all the answers, even in your field, you may not have all the answers. Go back and, find them out, then return and let them know. And because, you're right. I think a lot probably do fib a little bit. They say, check's in the mail or this is coming and it's not. And that's a good point. That goes a long way, right? Because that'll be found out real quick typically.
It's always sniffed out. Even with the half the truth answer, they're going to sniff it out and you're not going to get the business.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Or if you get it once, you may not, definitely will not get it twice.
Yeah. It won't be the return.
Yep. And really when it comes down to business, right, the person easiest to sell is your existing customers, right? Doesn't take near the money to market to them, to remarketing, right? Remarketing is always cheaper than marketing. And so you got to set yourself up for that remarketing by, again, telling the truth, saying what you're going to do, follow through. That's good. Good advice.
And in our world, in residential real estate, it might be 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 years before we see the person again. In the farm and ranch side of things, we might never see that person again.
Yeah.
But if we've told them the truth, if we've fostered that relationship, made the amount of touches that are appropriate to keep that ice broken, right? That initial icebreaker, referral business generates out of that.
Yeah.
And when it's time for them to buy their second home or sell this to upgrade as the family grows or downgrade, whatever the situation might be, if you stay in front of them, because there's 6,000 of us in Fort Worth alone, but if you stay in front of them, the repeat business typically follows.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it has to do with, you said the sales cycle. I think the longer the sales, I'll ask you a question. The longer the sales cycle, I think it's going to matter more on the just the integrity and everything you do, right? Because if it's a really, really short sales cycle where fast food joint or whatever, and they're just burning and churning, it's like, if you make one person mad, two people mad, whatever, there's 100 people behind you, so just step aside.
Yep.
Right. And longer sales cycle businesses such as yourself, you don't have 100 people just waiting outside your doors to do business with you.
Ready to boost your business's impact? Fully Promoted Fort Worth is your one-stop destination for branding needs, specializing in branded apparel and promotional products. They help attract, retain, and engage customers. From custom uniforms to eye-catching items, Fully Promoted Fort Worth has you covered. Contact them today to unlock your brand's potential. 817-803-4404. Fully Promoted, your success, their passion.
Looking to elevate your office meetings, client gifting, or corporate parties? Check out Gray's Craze, your one-stop destination for delightful catering options. Imagine impressing your colleagues and clients with our large charcuterie board, carefully curated with the finest artisanal cheeses, premium meats, and an array of accompaniments. And when it comes to client gifting, nothing says thank you quite like a luxurious selection of gourmet treats designed to meet your every need. Gray's Craze, catering that leaves a lasting impression.
No, you're exactly right. A prime example I have right now is I have a piece of property on the market that we are approaching 1 year. I just got the 2-week warning. And after this, I'm going to call, and we've already agreed to relist the property at a different price. But I've had to maintain trust with her for the past year. And it's a pretty unique situation. I'm maintaining the property for her as well. It's a estate, and the executor lives out of state. But I've had to tell them, I'm sorry, it hasn't sold yet.
Right.
Every month for a year. And that's tough. But it's been, we're about to go live on it again, and she trusts me to put it back out there and get the job done this time.
Let's talk to the seasoned business owner, right? Let's talk to them. And what encouragement or what advice or encouragement could you give the seasoned business owner?
Yeah, so really, if you've been in business and you've been successful, delegate. What got you there? What you touched on, what's your exit strategy? Well, bring in professionals that work on exit strategies and have that plan ahead of time. But delegate your tasks to folks. Let others learn what their responsibilities are, what your responsibilities may include. So that way, when it is time to sell, it is time to close, you've passed something on. The legacy doesn't just die with your exit. So, and as you know, in some cases, the legacy will die, and that information will just go away.
Yeah, definitely think you have to be intentional in that, right? I think of, with some of my businesses and my family, my kids, cousin, our niece, nephews, things like that are involved in the business, right? And so definitely setting them up and teaching them basically everything they need to know. So if I do get the opportunity to exit, then the business won't die.
Right.
Yeah.
If right.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, let's go into funny story. Right? Surely you got something, right? What's a funny story that not many people know about you?
Man, we talking personally, business,
Whatever.
Okay.
Whatever. Dealer's choice.
I was the homecoming king in junior college.
Oh, really?
And the funny part about that is I was the guy responsible for marketing the whole event. And
How did that go?
Well, there's one other person that had won it the year before that was in the nomination. So
Okay.
I won, and it was published in our hometown newspaper. And I think my name's on a wall, and in Blinn College, Bryan campus. But yeah, I won Homecoming King with 2 votes.
There you go.
So
yeah, a 50-50 chance.
yeah, exactly.
I love it.
It scared me.
So homecoming in junior college, huh?
Yep.
I'll be darned. Never heard of that.
I hadn't either.
Until they said you're on the ballot.
So, like a nitty gritty funny story. I don't know. Something will come to me tonight, I'm sure. A funny, ironic lesson learned sort of thing is I graduated college when I was 35.
Oh, okay.
So I use that when I'm talking to the young professionals I mentor as, reasons why you should follow through and check the boxes. If they're a college kid, hey, here's my story. Don't do what I did. So
I love it. So I forget what episode it was. It was probably pretty early, maybe episode 6, 7. I had a guy named Mike on here, and he's a life coach, business coach. Mm-hmm. And that was the day that you had handed out the socks. Yep. For your son.
For Sully, yeah.
For Sully. And I wore them, and then he texted me later that day. He went out the same day. He bought a pair of socks, 2 socks, mixed matched them, put them on, wore them all day, and took a picture. And he's probably the second best fan that we have.
Okay.
Besides you, I think he shared.
And
out.
Your wife.
And my wife. Yeah. But anyway, I'd like to talk a little bit about your adventures with Mr. Sully, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Because there may be some people that may listen to this or get this, right? And just knowing that they're not alone.
Yeah, thank you. So January of 2021, January 5th, 2021, my wife went into labor early that morning and denied it until about 8 o'clock that night. And we thought, it'd been a very normal pregnancy. She'd actually tested low risk on the genetics testing for Down syndrome.
Okay.
There were never any significant anatomy scans that were misproportioned. All the signs for Down syndrome were not there.
Yeah.
She actually tested positive for COVID during delivery without any signs or symptoms. Shared with you this morning that it was in active labor, and the nurse popped her head in and said COVID positive, and the doctor looked up and went to checked with everybody, are you okay to continue? And maybe a minute later, Sully was born.
Oh, wow.
So we're in isolation with our newborn.
Yeah.
In a different room than the post-op rooms or I guess postpartum rooms are nice.
Yeah. It's almost like a little hotel room.
Yeah. We weren't in like the suite or anything, but with our daughter Brighton, we had a nice room.
Yeah.
This one was tiny. And we couldn't leave, couldn't go down to the food court. I was bummed I couldn't get one of those good sandwiches down the way.
Right.
But the pediatrician comes in that afternoon and said, did you all have any genetics testing? And I literally said, oh, yeah, we did the one for Down syndrome. He was clear. And she said, actually, he has many of the markers for a child with Down syndrome. And she started pointing at all these things. And of course, we think he looks just like his sister. They're like twins. We don't see any of it at the time.
Yeah.
So to confirm that, they do a blood draw. And they knew something was up. Hindsight with this, they had the NICU team come do the blood draw, and they told us something like, oh, they're better at blood draws on babies. Okay. Well, they had their cart right there in the little hallway, the isolation hallway, and they started the blood draw, and he turned blue and just immediately went blue. And they took the oxygen mask off the wall, put it on his face, and he turned red. And they said, we have to go to the NICU now. Wow. And tell that to a mother that just had a baby 12 hours prior.
I couldn't imagine.
And, I'm seeing both sides, but they're still taking my son. But my wife's like
devastated.
Can't even put it into words.
Right.
Emotional wreck. And we were still at the hospital at the time, and they allowed the nurses to take pictures with our phone, and that's what we had until about 11:30 that night. We got a call from a doctor saying, though we haven't confirmed it, our medical team believes your son does have Down syndrome. He also has a heart defect, or a set of heart defects called tetralogy of flow. So we're freaking out. And he said, oh, by the way, that's the same heart defect Sean White had. So he's going to be okay. Okay. I mean, that's pretty good cardio capacity for Sean White.
Right.
So calmed us a little bit, but he was transported by ambulance across the street to Cook that night. And we're still in COVID jail.
Yeah.
So we were let out the next day. My wife's OB came in and said, you've been through enough, go home with your family.
Yeah.
And we had to wait 9 more days to see our son.
Oh, wow.
So he actually was in quarantine at Cook outside the NICU area because he had to have 2 negative tests before he could be in the general population. So fortunately, we knew some nurses there, and a very close friend of the family would stop by our house, and we'd leave blankets that smelled like us on the doorstep, and she would go hold Sully for those 9 days.
Wow.
So he ended up in there for 21 days. And really, he didn't come home on any oxygen, didn't have any, he didn't have feeding tube, just a normal baby.
Yeah.
He was in the NICU for so long because he was struggling to learn how to take a bottle. So it was mentioned he may need a GI tube, and it was like he heard that and said, nope.
Nope.
And I remember giving him his first successful bottle and just being in tears. And the nurse, we had this very seasoned nurse for that department, and she just really focused on us, getting him to feed without that extra support. So came home, opens up a whole bunch of doctor's visits, right? They poke and prod these kids because Down syndrome will open the door to other possibilities of things being different.
Okay.
So about half of the population with Down syndrome has some sort of heart defect, and about half of those need some sort of surgical intervention.
Oh, wow.
So Sully ended up having open heart surgery at 6 months.
Goodness
So
gracious.
Yeah, he's a tough little kid.
Yeah, no kidding. And he's 3, you said?
Yep.
Yeah, 3 now?
3.5.
3.5. Yeah, definitely.
It's super important.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's a pretty normal 3.5-year-old boy now.
Yeah.
Wild, I'll say feral. He likes to throw things on the ground and hear them break.
Oh, okay.
He ripped some shelves off the wall the other day. That was cool. But he does things that his peers, his typically developing peers, aren't doing yet. He puts socks and shoes on properly.
Oh, wow.
If we forget to brush his teeth, he'll bring us a toothbrush and toothpaste and want us to brush his teeth.
Dang.
He has one medicine left, and
Okay.
we open the drawer of where the syringes are, and it's oral, but we use a syringe, and he'll come running for it.
Okay.
So he's a smart kid.
Yeah. That's cool. For those that maybe do have a child or handle a child or know a child or whatever with Down syndrome, right? What would you tell them?
Yeah. So some of the best advice I got when he was brand new was that there's not a timeline. So you can't put a baby on the same timeline you would, or a baby with Down syndrome on the same timelines. Walking comes at a different time. Teeth came in a weird order.
Okay.
So he got a baby tooth, and weird to the point that his dentist x-rayed to see if there are more teeth in there. And then the next set were rear molars.
Okay.
So imagine that, you're supposed it grows with them as they grow. So they're kind of used to it by the time the molars kick in.
Right.
And it went from one tooth to molars.
Oh, wow.
Walking took him a long time to trust pulling up. And then we have video of it. One day he just decided, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to walk.
Okay.
So don't trust a timeline or don't compare your kid to a timeline.
Yeah.
We remind ourselves of that all the time. Like, just because so-and-so is 3 months older doesn't mean that we should be doing this yet.
Yeah. I definitely think you probably do see this, that a lot of society, for the most part, they want you to fit in a box and they want your kid to fit in a box.
Yeah.
Right. And obviously, he fits in a box. He fits in his box that's created for him.
Yeah.
Right. Not everybody else's. Right. But that's a good lesson really for any of us.
Isn't it?
Right. I mean, my oldest son, whenever he was, he was 15 or 14 months before he started walking.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and then going through elementary, a lot of the teachers are like, hey, we need to test him for autism. And, it's just because he was different.
Yep.
Nothing's wrong with him. Not that, having autism is wrong or anything, but just, for their minds, they're thinking, oh, something's wrong. It's like, no, nothing's wrong with him. He's just who he is.
Yeah.
This is how he was born. And I think we need to adapt to that versus having him adapt to us.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be great if we could all just be complete individuals
Right. Yeah.
and not have to fit into some box? I talked to you about private schools can tell him no. But
yeah, that's crazy.
If you have the kids of name brand private school spend 13 years of their lives with a kid with Down syndrome right next to their side, how much better members of society are those kids?
Completely, right? And I all the time in our martial arts business, we get calls from parents and says, hey, do y'all take special needs kids?
Yeah.
I'm like, sure.
Yeah, why not?
Why not? Yeah. And I'll tell you, whenever that kid with Down syndrome, or we actually had one with multiple sclerosis, and he was in a walker.
Wow.
And he did that for a long time until he couldn't walk anymore. We bought him a wheelchair, and he still came. And the other kids lit up whenever he came in, right? They just light up.
Yeah.
And it's so cool to see. So, yeah, I don't know.
Sully's in an adaptive dance class.
Okay.
And so I'll show you the shirt sometime, but there's 4 butterflies on the shirt, and he's one of the 4 because he's one of the original students.
Oh, cool.
And they made an exception for him. I think you're supposed to be 2 or maybe 3. And he was about 2. He wasn't walking yet.
Yeah.
And I mean, for the first year, he just sat there and let the instructors hold him, and he just loved it, right?
Yeah.
College age girls holding him all day.
I'll sign up. No, I'm just kidding.
So it's mostly kids with Down syndrome. There's a couple other chromosomal disorders in there, and a couple kids with autism in there that the moms and dads get to interact with one another outside of a typical school setting, and the kids get to do their thing, and they have a recital, and
that's cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, that's cool.
And he doesn't do anything during practice, but then he dances at home.
Right.
So
yeah.
That's
how I am whenever we go dancing. I'll just sit there.
Yeah.
But I'll dance at home all the time.
Wow.
Anyway, thank you for sharing, the Sully story. And I think it's important, right? Because, he's important. And I know there may be some listeners or whatever. And hey, listen, if you don't have someone with Down syndrome or any kind of special needs, but you know someone that does, and send them this podcast, right? Yeah. I think it'd be good. And
those in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, reach out to me. Try to connect with me. We have a network of folks that are ahead of us in the journey, are just behind us in the journey, but there's no need to try to do this alone. We've heard some horror stories of folks trying to do this alone. And there's a huge network of resources out there. And unfortunately, you're going to hit roadblocks with different providers along the way. And And I just love to help navigate that any way possible.
I love it. So real quick before we end, I want to give a shout out, right, to what you do, and how can our audience help you, and how can we help you in your business, right? So you said you do farm and ranch.
Yeah.
Right. So if you could give a little 20-second, 30-second commercial, how can people get a hold of you? And
Yeah, so I'm a licensed realtor in the state of Texas with Berkshire Hathaway Premier Properties. I focus on residential and farm and ranch real estate in North Texas. Be reached at 817-999-4390 or PRM_land_home, I think, on Instagram.
Perfect. I'll put that into the description of the podcast.
So anywhere in North Texas is my comfort zone.
Cool. All right, man. Well, I appreciate the friendship and the conversation. Hey, listen, if you're still watching, number one, you're probably my wife or maybe Pryce's wife.
Might just be me.
Or you're watching the rerun. But no, thank you for watching later in the podcast. Please share this out and comment, give us a thumbs up, subscribe. It really does help the algorithm and helps the channel continue to grow. And we just want to reach as many people as we can and give some inspiration out there.
Yeah, thanks, Donnie. I appreciate this.
Yeah, I appreciate you. Glad you're on.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see you next time on The Biz Life.